Now, we're still keeping an eye on the coronavirus situation in Beijing, which is currently on a level 2 alert, the second highest in a 4-tier COVID-19 emergency response system.
Beijing has 158 cases from the recent outbreak, and so far the scale of infections in Beijing is far from reaching the levels that Wuhan experienced in the early stages of the pandemic. But what's it like for the average person living in Beijing now?
To answer that, we're pleased to welcome Junice Yeo, a Singaporean living in Beijing with her family. Now, she moved to the Chinese capital a year and a half ago, but left on January 30th when the outbreak first escalated to return to Singapore. She's back in Beijing, currently under quarantine. Let's begin your story here, Junice. Why did you decide to return to Beijing instead of staying longer in Singapore?
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me. So the reason why we decided to come back was just simply because we had been away for a pretty long time. So we left Beijing when the first lockdown happened on January the 30th. And since then we'd been in Singapore for about 4 months or so. And my husband's job is in Beijing. Our children's school are in Beijing. So it just made sense. And to be honest, living out of a suitcase for 4 months, it's fine with being in Singapore, of course, but it gets tiring. And of course, we'd love to have the children back in school. So that's why we decided to come back.
Right. Well, Junice, you went back to Beijing on June the 4th after multiple attempts. Do you regret the decision now, though, given that the situation in Singapore has improved, but the opposite is happening in Beijing?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and to be honest, I would say no. The reason is because we've gone through the quarantine bit, which is the 14 days in central quarantine in Beijing now, and I would say the most difficult part is behind us. Our flight was postponed multiple times over the last 4 months, and to be honest, the lack of uncertainty is actually difficult for the family. So for us, it's I think we're just really happy to move on back to being in China right now, and now with the case in Beijing, a lot of people are saying this is possibly the second wave. It might be so, and I think it's interesting to see how other countries who are reopening at the moment might be just maybe perhaps 2 months behind what China is facing right now. So I think it's better for us to be here and to be back home, but also to just go through it while we can right now and hopefully come out of that in safe hands.
Yeah, definitely. Now, despite the Chinese capital being at a level 2 alert again, is there a difference in how the public is reacting to this second wave?
No, yeah. So I would say yes, there's definitely a big difference that I feel, at least, and I've been in quarantine this whole time, so I might not be able to speak for everyone in Beijing, but the learning experience from 4 months ago is very significant. People know the virus better. There are tracing apps that people use. The testing facilities are widely available. The number of tests you can do in a day is so high that I think it gives assurance to people that the government is aware of what's going on and is well in control, despite the fact that this outbreak was unprecedented. From the moment we landed in Beijing airport, it was so clear to us that everything was watertight. The number of paperwork we had to do, they left no stone unturned when it comes to tracking, to tracing, and I think to some extent Singapore is also doing the same thing right now. And I think it gives the community the much needed sense of assurance.
Right. Well,
yeah.
Like you said, you're in quarantine. You haven't been able to interact with anybody. So, but are you able to say whether there's an undercurrent of fear or caution at the very least?
I would say yes. There are some, especially when the news first came out, because people came out of being locked in for a good 8 to 12 weeks in China, and finally when they had the confidence to tell the world that we had no traces of COVID for the last 52 days, and then suddenly a news breaks that the virus is found in a marketplace, it just obviously it sends shockwaves and fear. So very quickly people started to dump their seafoods, and inevitably you get businesses and restaurants impacted. People are again scared of going out, but so I think there is some sense of fear. I guess the only thing is people are now used to the new normal. People are used to working from home, online schooling. So when Beijing announced it, very quickly all the parents started to shake, because we know it's back to online schooling again, which we hate. So and even my husband's company, they just reintroduced the split shift again, and very quickly people just took to it, like they didn't have to adapt to it anymore. So I guess in that sense there is a fear, but there's also a sense of normalcy now that we accept that this is the reality.
Well, Junice, we want to thank you for making time for us today. We wish you and your family all the very best. We've been speaking to Junice Yeo on living in Beijing under the threat of a second COVID-19 wave.